Hi everyone, Julian here with a tutorial for Design 211 Project 6. In this video tutorial we're going to go over how we can get the contours for our site um, and how to create shadows for our buildings as well. So first thing you might want to do is go into Google Earth. If you haven't already, you can press R to readjust the camera. So this is my site in Aleph Brookfield. So I'm going to go in here, make sure I've got all of the boundaries of my site that I've determined from my OpenStreetMap import. And I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot using the snipping tool, create a new screenshot here, and then we'll grab all the area around my site. I can just do like a simple copy, go into Rhino, Control V, and then it's going to create that photo. So then you can enlarge it when you're happy with it. And then you might want to put it on its own layer. So this is going to be a Google Earth photo 2. So I'm going to click on the photo. I'm going to right click this, change object layer, and then I might lock everything else just so that it's a bit easier to scale this. So I've got my map here, and you'll notice that it's like on top of my hatches. So what I could maybe do is go to perspective here, zoom into my map, lower it about a meter, and then we'll go back to the top here. Looks like we're still on top, so I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do a set point command. I'm going to select check only Z. I'm going to make it in line with my hatches, and then I'm going to try to go a meter underneath. See if that makes a difference. Okay, well, we can still work with this. So basically what we want to do is find something in the map that I can see on my from Google Earth that I can see in my map. So in my case, it's this this kind of grain silo building. So I'm going to line that up here. So this is one end, and that's the other end. So I can do a scale 2D command, go from one end of the building to the other end here, and then bring that all the way to the edge here, to this near. And then I can kind of see how I'm aligned to these other buildings. It might not be super precise because everything is a bit distorted in Google Earth, like from these photos, because of the way that camera lenses work. But as long as your roads are pretty well aligned, then you've got a good setup for tracing everything that you kind of find here that you'd like to include in your map. So once you're happy with that, you can lock that, and then now I won't select it by accident. Next step that we want to do here in order to get our contour lines, as just a quick refresher for those who are still struggling with that, we're going to go to Contour Map Creator. It's this website here. We're going to look up, you could just look up Calgary if you wanted to, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And then I'm going to find my site in Aleph here. So mine is near this massive train yard. Or you could look up, your site, like neighborhood. Okay, there we are. So I'm gonna locate my site here, which I can identify as this little triangle shaped site next to the grain silos. So I'm gonna zoom out so that I can see everything that I need for my site plan for the 1 to 1000, which here, if I turn off this layer, is about the extent of this building on the rail lines, or in between the rails, and a couple blocks down from my site itself. So go back here. I'm going to set my interval here somewhere between 2 and 5 meters, let's say. So first thing we have to do is draw a box that the contour map creator is going to use to get the data. So you basically need to draw like 2 arrows. And here it looks like my other arrow is way too far away. So we want to bring that back up. So I'm going to go past that building that's in the middle of the train yard, and then somewhere about here to get all of the topography that I need. So once I've got that, and I've got my 2 markers, I'm going to do get data on the sampling thing here. And then we can see there that there's kind of a hill here, and then it flattens out. What I can do after that, like after a bit of experimenting, this is what I came to here. So I set my layer interval to 4 meters. So I've got just a little bit more density, or like tighter spacing where the hill is. That indicates like my site condition, and then where it levels out, which is this really flat area here. So if I'm happy with that, I can take just a simple screenshot using the snipping tool. You want to try to get that up to the line. I can copy that. Again, I can go into Rhino here, just Control V, and then create my photo here. You can also do like picture here, and then you'll find the file if you want to do it that way. Okay, so same thing with that Google Earth photo. We need to find something to align to. Here, I think what I can do is align this photo to this rail yard building right there. So I'm going to use the move command, or M, go from this point here to that point there, and then I'm going to do a scale 2D from this point to the end of the building, which looks like it's about there, but it looks like we're actually like pretty to scale, funny enough. But just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to go from this point to the edge of the building, which appears to be about here, and then scale it up to this line so that this line is in line with the beginning and the end of the building. And then I should see how this is also lining up with my other buildings there. So I could do like contour map creator 1 to 1002. So I'll change that object layer here, and then I should see where this outline of this building is, where my hatch is, and it looks like it aligns pretty well. So I'm happy with that. So next step then would be to lock this map layer, and then maybe I can do hold shift, select all these layers, and then hit the light bulb and then turn them off, so it's a little bit less distracting, and then create a new layer, and I'm going to call this my 1 to 1000 contours, where I have one right here, so I can get started tracing here. So I found this to be the most accurate way in order to get these contours, but we just kind of go point to point to point. Pretty simple, bit of a repetitive task, but you can put some music on, put something on the background, and we just kind of want to imagine where the points are on these lines and just trace them all. So pretty simple. I'll probably fast forward to the end of this, but basically I'm using the polyline tool here, clicking on the ends and all the points in between, trying to get this like center line. And then if you mess up one of the points, you can always do Control Z and then you could redo it. So you don't have to redraw the whole line if you're in the middle of drawing like a really complex line. And then instead of having to click on this every time, you could use spacebar and it'll just redo the last command. Okay, so once you've finished tracing all of your lines, compare this on and off. And what we can do is group them all together. And then we can turn on our other layers. Then we can see how those are interacting. So maybe we want to have, see where our sheets are. What we can do is just click on our grouped contours and we can do a split command and then we can select the cutting object to be our frame. And then once we've done that, it'll split all of these parts that we can ungroup, and then we should be able to very easily just delete them. Like so. And now we have just the contours that we need. So once we're done tracing our contour lines and cleaning up the edges, what we can do is look at adding a bit of depth to our map and adding shadows to our buildings. So one way we can do that is by going to this website called shademap.app. Basically what this website will do is it'll allow us to pick a date and a time to analyze the shadows on your site. So we could look at maybe like the summer solstice, which is the when the sun is at its highest point versus the winter equinox where it would be at its lowest point. And then we can scrub through the day there and see what the shadows might look like around sunrise or sunset. And then we could use this information in order to show how our observatory is being casted on with shadows from surrounding buildings, or how it's not in the shadow surrounding buildings. Or we can just use it to create like a little bit of a sense of depth. So what I'll be using this for is for creating depth. So I might set this around, let's say, like 6 p.m. on June 21st, the summer solstice. And this will give me just like a little bit of depth on all of my buildings in order to give a sense of like more 3D to our map. So the next step here is basically to take a screenshot or using the snipping tool, make sure that you can capture everything that you need. After we've got that, we can copy it. We can throw it into our Rhino file. Control V. or you can use the picture and place command there. So again, I'm going to use this convenient building in order to help me scale the photo to my sitemap. So I'm going to go from this end to this end here, scale that down until I'm happy with that. And then that should be pretty good. So the next step there is we can have our building hatches shown. And how we could do that is we could select all our building hatches. So these, like if I show here, if I create a layer for the shade map, and then right click it, change object layer, I can turn it off and I can see how it's pretty well aligned, right? But what I might want to do is go to all my buildings, hatches here. I'm going to select the objects. I'm going to do border command, group that, and then I'll do something like building outlines here. Maybe we'll make it like a really visible color, like a green maybe. Change object layer, group those, and then I'll turn my shade map back on. And what I can see is how my alignment is working. So maybe I do want to change this just like a little bit so that it aligns a little bit nicer. You could also use your gumball tool here in order to do that. Next step would be to lock those two layers and then create a layer for shadows. I'll just make it this kind of like dark gray color for now. And then what we can do is we can go in here and trace kind of the outer edge. Like that. Same thing here. We basically want to connect back all these shadows to our building. And how that's going to work is we're going to use, here we can turn this off, the hatches. We're going to use those polylines from our building outlines and then help us build our shadows. So we'll do like a hatch command. Oop. So maybe we'll ungroup those. So I'm going to select the building outlines that I have plus the shadow lines that I created. And then I'm going to do a hatch, or what I could do is a curve Boolean like this. 1, 2, 3, and then hatch that. And you'll see that I've added a shadow to that building. And I can keep doing this for the other buildings. So go over here. Trace this shadow. Bring that back to this corner. Select those lines. Curve Boolean. Select inside. Hatch. And slowly we start adding a lot more depth to our building. And then if we have a building that's like a little bit more complex, what we can do, we'll realign this one. Maybe I'll realign it the same way I did the last time. Because I can take this outline, copy and paste that, and then I can move it off to the side here and then kind of catch that shadow that way. Same thing here. So we can turn our shadow map off. Then I can select these two lines. I can use my curve Boolean command. Create my shadow there. Create my shadow here. Hatch that in. And then I can start doing the same for all of these. You can see here how we can add depth, just a bit of depth to our site plan. You can turn your building hatches back on like that. And then, of course, you can play around with the like how dark the shadow is. Maybe it's just a really light shadow. Maybe it's a bit darker depending on how your other layers are working and what colors you're using for the others. And then what we can do is maybe darken our topography lines, and by doing that, we can make them a bit more visible, and then make our shadows a kind of darker color than our roads so that we can cast them on top of that layer. But I encourage you to play around with these different hatches and different shades and playing with opacity once you get your map, if you choose to take it into Illustrator. All right, thanks for listening.